We're going to start today with the Shephelah. Remember, the word Shephelah means low rolling hills. It's like our word Piedmont in English. Low rolling hills that lead up to the hill country, specifically the hill country of Judah. The Shephelah, to me, for some reason, has become my favorite geographical area. It is so important to Israel, her history, as the buffer zone between the rest of the world, right? All of the rest of the world is traveling out here on the coastal plain, and Israel, for the most part, is kind of crammed up here in the hills where they're safe, particularly when they're not trusting the Lord to take over everything. We'll talk more about that today, but Israel is kind of in the safety of the hills, and the whole world is traveling on the coastal plain, and the Shephelah becomes the buffer zone in between, which is why you find, Samson interacting with the Philistines in the Shephelah. You find David fighting Goliath in the Shephelah. It's so incredibly important strategically to Israel. And maybe another reason I love it so much is because, this is kind of a weird reason, but tourists don't go there. You can't find an olive wood shop in the Shephelah anywhere. You can't find a souvenir shop. We were down there once years ago, and all of a sudden we heard this dinging song kind of thing, and I said to Jan, that sounds like an ice cream truck. And this ice cream truck came driving back in there. Apparently somebody said there's a tourist bus, a study bus or whatever, and this ice cream truck shows up in the middle of Shephelah. But other than that, there's nothing to buy down there. Unfortunately, most tourist kind of trips aren't going to take you there. For that reason, there's nothing to do down there. Well, there's tons of stuff to do. And if you ever are able to travel to Israel, it really is very important to get down to the Shephelah. So let's jump in. Maybe I will mention now, it probably will come up in our notes, but as we look at this map, remember there is a Shephelah here between the coast and the hill country of Judah, but notice even on this topographical map, there really is no Shephelah up here in the hill country of Samaria. The hills just kind of drop right down to the coast. There are no low rolling hills. And as we think about that, remember, God is sculpting this for various reasons, which we will begin to see again today, to accomplish his purpose with his people Israel. So here we go. The Shephelah, or low rolling hills, are foothills between the coastal plain and the hill country of Judah, about 27 miles north and south, 10 miles east and west. Again, these are small little pieces of property, but very much a strategic region between the world that's traveling out there on the coastal plain and the hill country where Israel dwells for the most part. What we have are these east-west running valleys because, remember, the hill country is this watershed ridge. We're going to talk more about it later today. But the hill country is this watershed ridge, this range of mountains. Think of the Rocky Mountains, not nearly that big or long, but think of the Rocky Mountains where the watershed ridge is running north and south. That's the hill country. The watershed ridge is running north and south. So all the rains are falling up there. The water is gushing down these deep V-shaped ravines, and they're washing all that dirt down here into these broad valleys of the Shephelah. So the broad valleys of the broader valleys of the Shephelah are very fertile, rich runoff soil. They're east-west valleys that are leading from easily, as it were, from the coast up to the hills. And you're going to find a great deal of farming there. You're going to read about that in Samson's ministry. We'll read some of those texts today. Grains, wheat fields. You're in Nebraska. I grew up in Kansas. Wheat fields. Olive trees, grape vineyards, and so forth, and stands of sycamore trees. All of those are mentioned in these texts that I'm giving you here. So besides being a buffer zone and militarily strategic, it's also agriculturally significant and important, and we need to keep all that in mind. So here is the Shephelah, west of the hill country of Judah as a buffer between the coast and the hills of Judah, right? Here's our satellite map, and here we see the Shephelah. By the way, I'm going to mention on this map, let's see if we can get that circle. You can see the green of the Shephelah here, and you also see this green kind of triangle area here. You're going to see that frequently on the map, and it's going to really help us kind of define a piece of the hill country we need to talk about. But you might ask, and it's a good question, why in the world is that all green right there? And the answer is that when the Jewish nation was created in 1948 and the Jews began to inhabit the hills again here, especially West Jerusalem and down to the coast, they discovered that over the years, the population that had lived in this region for many, many years had deforested the hills and had probably overgrazed with the sheep and the goats. And of course, that environmentally causes the mountains to erode and degrade. And so Israel began immediately planting trees. Some of you older folks might remember buying a tree. You could buy a tree in Israel. Maybe some of you did that. That was a big thing back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Purchase a tree and plant it in Israel, have it planted in Israel. And that's why you see all of the foliage here, is because the Jews reforested that area. So just so you understand why the green is there, and it is going to help us define something a little bit later in our thinking today. So again, here is the Shephelah between the coast and the hill country, and here's that reforested area that we'll talk about a little more in a moment. Lines of communication. Okay, how do you travel in this area? Travel is going to obviously move from the east to the west, because as the water is coming down off of that north-south ridge, it's flowing east and west, mostly west, and it's washing down into these valleys that are being cut on west toward the sea, the Mediterranean Sea. And there are 5 main east-west valleys in the Shephelah that we need to get control of in our mind, because back in the ancient world, people were trying to get control of them physically for their strategic importance. 5 main east-west valleys. Well, let me just name those valleys for you. We're going to start from the north and move our way south. We're going to begin with the Aijalon Valley, the Sorek Valley. These names may sound familiar to you. The Elah Valley, the Guvrin Valley, which is sometimes called by another name, but we'll stick with Guvrin, and the Lachish Valley for ease of remembering. The Lachish Valley will be our 5th. The Aijalon, Sorek, Elah, Guvrin, Lachish. Those are our 5 valleys for today. These valleys are also intersected by a north-south route. There is a kind of a, I don't know how to describe it, a break in the middle of these valleys that allows for a north-south road to cross each one of these valleys and connect them in the middle. This is a kind of a transverse route connecting the valleys in the middle from the north to the south as they move from the east to the west. And we are going to call that, for lack of a better term, I don't know why I've always just called it this, the Shephelah connection. It's connecting these 5 valleys of the Shephelah, and it's running right down kind of the middle of all of them, connecting them so that you can travel from one to the other, from north to south. Generally speaking, I mean, this is kind of a basic graphic to remind us there are 5 east-west valleys, and then there's going to be the Shephelah connection that's running north-south and joining all of them. So let's start in the north with the valleys, and then we will look at their cities. Let's start with the Aijalon Valley in the north. Description and route, the main artery, this valley, when you think of the 5 valleys, and I tell my students, I'm going to give you a quiz on this. Which is the most important of the 5 valleys of the Shephelah? And the answer is this one. The Aijalon is the most important strategic valley, if you can own one of these valleys as King Solomon or King David or whoever you might be, it's the Aijalon Valley. From the coastal plain to the hill country, this is the most important connective route, connective valley between the rest of the world and the hill country where you dwell. It is partly that the reason is because it's the easiest access from the port of Joppa. The mouth of this valley is very close to the coastal port of Joppa, right? Up to Ramah, just north of Jerusalem, which is your capital city, right? So you're connecting essentially your capital city or very near your capital city with your port city. Here is my depiction of the Aijalon Valley, this purple route coming from Joppa into the mouth of the valley, turning a bit and finding a ridge, coming up the ridge to Ramah, and now you are just north, 6 miles north of Jerusalem. This is the most important of your 5 valleys because of its connection, its near connection to the port and to the capital. So here is a kind of our satellite image of the Aijalon Valley, and you can see here it's a rather broad valley. You will notice as we go through the 5 valleys that as we move south, they become more and more narrow, more and more constricted. This is the biggest of the valleys. And it is, of course, again, the most strategic. And we'll be talking about this beautiful broad valley here as we look at the Aijalon Valley. Notice it has a little, I call it a thumb. You're going to hear me say this a million times. You'll get tired of it this morning. But the Aijalon Valley has this little thumb where the route is going to come from Joppa and the coast. It's going to turn into this little thumb, and it's going to catch a ridge. Notice how broken these V-shaped valleys are that are coming off of the watershed, right? And so in order to get from the Shephelah up to the north-south watershed, what you really need to do is find, if you can, a contiguous ridge, a continuous ridge. And so you come from Joppa into the Aijalon, into this little thumb, and you find a contiguous ridge, a basically unbroken ridge that is going to lead you all the way up to the watershed, the north-south ridge route. All right, so we're looking for contiguous ridges instead of these broken ridges, a contiguous ridge to get us up to the watershed. So the route passed from the coast, from Joppa, toward the east through the mouth of the valley. Then it turned into a northeastern thumb, that little thumb that I showed you of the valley, and climbed onto a ridge called the Way of Beth Horon. That's used in the Bible, the Way of Beth Horon. It passed through Lower Beth Horon and Upper Beth Horon. So there are 2 Beth Horons. Lower, obviously, is going to be the first one on the ridge as you move up, right? And then Upper is the next one on the ridge. Lower and Upper Beth Horon. And eventually, when you get to the top of the north-south watershed, you will be at Ramah. All right? So from Joppa into the thumb of the Aijalon Valley and up the Beth Horon Ridge, that contiguous ridge, up to Ramah, and now you are 6 miles north of Jerusalem. Now, let me ask you a question, class, to kind of make sure everybody's awake this morning. What would make Ramah a good place to have your capital? Water, okay. Yeah, I mean, the access, right? So your capital is like directly tied to your port. It's directly tied to your port. I mean, that'd be great, right? But why would that not be great? Because they can get to you easier, right? So you're thinking about trade-offs. Yeah, it'd be great if you could go right from the capital to the port, but if you can go easily from the capital to the port, then people can go easily from the port to your capital, and it's going to be harder to defend. So Jerusalem is south of Ramah, which in a way is strategic because it protects Jerusalem a little more from direct attack, easy attack from the coast. Does that make sense? So thanks for participating there and thinking about, this is the way I want you to think. Why this and why not that? So there is our route from the coast up through Aijalon to Ramah, just north, 6 miles north or so of Jerusalem. Here comes our road into the mouth of the valley. Here's our valley. It's going to turn into that thumb of the valley because it finds a contiguous ridge through the Beth Horons, lower Beth Horon and upper Beth Horon, right to Ramah, which today is Ramallah, a huge Arab town, but you're just north of Jerusalem. If you could own one road in the Shephelah, this would be it. The transverse road would also be important. It'd be hard to choose this one or that one, but this one is giving you, as the Jewish nation, access down to the coast and up to the hills. It's giving you the best access. This is the Aijalon Valley. So here comes our road again from Joppa into that little thumb of the valley and up the Beth Horon Ridge. You're getting a little better feel here to Ramah, and then there up on the ridge is Jerusalem, just to the south of Ramah. Does that make sense? Here's our Aijalon Valley with its little thumb that's going to get us over to the Beth Horons. This valley, of course, was made famous by Joshua's Battle of the Long Day. They came up from Jericho on the other side, the east side of the ridge. They defeated Jericho. They defeated Ai. The Gibeonites did their thing, and we'll find out why later this morning. The Gibeonites pretended to be from a far country, made league with Jerusalem. The southern Canaanites heard that Gibeon had made a treaty with Israel, and so the southern coalition of Canaanites attacked Gibeon, which means Israel now has to defend Gibeon because they made a treaty with them, and God delivers the southern coalition of Canaanites into the hands of Joshua toward the end of the day, and God extends that day as the Canaanites flee down the Beth Horon Ridge, right, in the Aijalon Valley, back down to the coast and the southern regions of Israel. That battle took place in this valley, the Aijalon Valley. The cities of the Aijalon Valley, there are 3 that we want to look at: Gezer, Aijalon, and the Beth Horons. Let's start with Gezer. Gezer is the controlling fortress city at the mouth, or the western end of the valley. It was a most valuable possession. So here's Gezer, right at the mouth of the valley. Notice it's almost on that 35E route that's coming up from Philistia, Gath, and Ekron. Here's Gezer, right at the mouth of this valley. And so Gezer is incredibly important, right? It's controlling entrance into the Aijalon Valley, which is the best valley to get up to Israel. So you want to control Gezer. It is your gate. It's your front door. You want to control Gezer. If I ask my students on a quiz, which city of the Shephelah would you want? Most of all, probably the best answer to that question would be this one, Gezer. Notice that Gezer was not ruled by Israel until the days of Solomon, because the Egyptians wanted it, and the Philistines wanted it, and everybody wanted it. And it's a high tell. It's a big city right at the mouth of this important valley overlooking the coast and 35E. Everybody wanted that city, and Egypt owned it at the time of Solomon. And how did Solomon get it? 1 Kings 9. This is the account of the forced labor that Solomon drafted to build the house of the Lord and his own house, including Hatzor and Megiddo and Gezer. We're going to look at Megiddo already from some hints that we've done. he's building the house of the Lord, and he's drafting people from Hatzor Megiddo and Gezer. Here's a little parenthesis. I love this parenthesis in the Bible. Pharaoh, king of Egypt, had gone up and captured Gezer and burned it with fire. Remember, you defeat it, you destroy it, then somebody builds something else. You defeat it, destroy it, build something else. That's how you get these tells. Pharaoh had captured Gezer back in the history, back in the past. He'd burned it with fire. He'd killed the Canaanites who lived there. So it was controlled by Canaanites until the days of the Pharaoh and Solomon. And Pharaoh gave it as a dowry to his daughter, Solomon's wife. How many wives did Solomon have? 700 wives, 300 concubines. Here's another wife from Pharaoh. You know, and the kings married these women in order to make treaties and so forth. And so Pharaoh says, here's my daughter. Do you want her as a wife? I'm giving you Gezer as her dowry. And he says, I don't care how she looks. I got plenty of wives. I want Gezer. Seriously. I mean, he had plenty of wives, but he wanted Gezer. And he got Gezer by intermarrying with Pharaoh's daughter, and he rebuilt Gezer and Lower Beth Horon. Now he controls the front door to Israel for the first time ever. And that is a good thing. So here sits Gezer at the mouth of the Aijalon Valley, protecting everything that's coming in from the coast. We're going to look now, we're going to kind of stand over where Aijalon is, which we'll talk about in a minute. We're going to look out and we're going to take a view down toward Joppa and past Gezer. We're standing actually on a hill very near Aijalon, and we're looking right out the mouth of the Aijalon Valley. Here is Joppa, which today is Tel Aviv. So you can see all the white buildings of Tel Aviv here. You see some smoke from some of the factories in Tel Aviv, which always help you know exactly where Joppa is, or pretty much where Joppa is. Here's the mouth of the valley. The thumb is going to be over here. The road's coming in from Joppa, Tel Aviv, and turning this way. And here is Gezer, this little bald hill to the left here. You can't see it very well here, but I will telephoto in, and we will be able to see Gezer as it overlooks the entrance to the valley and the turn toward the thumb. We've got out our telephoto now and turned a little more toward Gezer. It's right smack in the middle of our picture. Tel Gezer, the mouth of the valley, is over here, and Tel Aviv and Joppa. And you will notice right here a fortress. It was built by the Crusaders back in the years. Why would the Crusaders build a fort here? Same reason. The Gezer is there. To control this valley is to control everything up to Israel and Jerusalem. And, this is the front door. And you want to control it. When the British took over, in their imperial empire building, they took over or were assigned Palestine. They ruled Palestine before World War II and during and after World War II, when eventually it was turned over, as it were, to the Arabs and the Jews in 1948. But in any case, when the British were enforcing rule in Palestine, they built their head British police force station here in the Aijalon Valley. Why would they do that? The same reason everybody wanted Gezer, right? Because they need to control this front door valley. This is called Latrun, and you can still see it there today. A very important and strategic piece of property right smack in the middle of the Aijalon Valley. We've telephotoed in again, and here is Gezer right here, and we are going to head up there. Let's walk up toward Tel Gezer and up on to the top. Notice they've done all kinds of excavations. They've probably done more since I've been up there. But they did find up there these Solomonic gates. Remember, Solomon fortified Gezer after it was given to him by the Pharaoh of Egypt. Take a look at these gates. Remember, I talked about gate complexes. You don't just build a hole through a wall as a gate, but you build a complex. And if you look at this one and kind of get a picture of it in your mind, it almost looks like, I don't know, an E on both sides facing each other, so to speak. We are going to see these in many other places. Megiddo and Hatzor, where Solomon built cities, he's going to build this kind of a gate complex. Archaeologists discover that this is the way Solomon builds gates, so when we find these kind of gates, we know they're Solomonic. We're standing now on Gezer, and we're looking toward Tel Aviv, or Joppa. And what we're going to do is we're going to pan to the right and look all the way along the Aijalon Valley up toward the Thumb, and then eventually the Beth Horons, and even up toward Jerusalem. So right now we're standing on Gezer, we're looking down at Joppa, Tel Aviv, and let's pan a little bit to the right. And we're looking basically straight north, directly across the valley. You see kind of how broad this is. Here are some farm buildings. Down here, silos and so forth. I mean, this is a very broad valley, very fertile valley, heading up toward the Beth Horons and to Ramah. Let's turn to the right again, a little more. And we begin to see the thumb of the valley as it's going to head up to the Beth Horons and up the ridge to Ramah. Again, imagine you're Pharaoh of Egypt or you're Solomon, you're overlooking this valley, and by overlooking it, you're controlling everybody who's coming in and out of the front door, as it were, to Israel up there in the hills. So here's the thumb into which the road will turn, and up the Beth Horon ridge to Ramah. We've turned now, and we're looking directly to the east. We're looking at the watershed ridge, the north-south watershed ridge of the hill country of Judah, and Ramah is about right in there. Here's our road from the Beth Horons up to Ramah, and Jerusalem is about right in here, 6 miles farther to the south. That's Gezer. Our next city is Aijalon. Aijalon commands the eastern end of the valley, where the thumb is located. It's kind of overlooking that thumb where the road turns. It's the eastern end of the valley where the main east-west route is met by the north-south Shephelah connection. Remember, we have this north-south connecting road, and Aijalon is overlooking that intersection, not just the thumb into which the main road turns, but this north-south Shephelah connection is coming right there where Aijalon is. So now Aijalon is controlling the eastern end of the valley and the intersection with the north-south Shephelah route. Aijalon was a Levitical city, Joshua 21. The tribe of Dan failed to conquer. I'll talk about that in just a minute, and we'll talk more about that when we talk about another region. But this is mentioned in the account of Jonathan's defeat of the Philistines in 1 Samuel 14. I don't have time to tell you all these stories, but someday you'll be reading along. You say, oh, I remember that mention of that story and the importance of the city. New Testament Emmaus was near Aijalon. Okay. The New Testament city of Emmaus, and what happened on the road to Emmaus, right? Jesus appeared to 2 disciples who were walking from Jerusalem. They'd been in Jerusalem. Jesus had died. Everybody's discouraged. They don't know what's going on, and they're walking home down toward the Aijalon Valley to Emmaus, and Jesus appears and walks with them, unbeknownst to them. By the way, probably, don't get distracted here, that's probably a man and a woman. It's probably not 2 guys. It's a man and a woman. They are heading home. They eat dinner, and Jesus reveals himself. There's debate on that, so if you disagree, fine. But in any case, when I think of Aijalon, I think of Emmaus, and they're just very close together there. though I don't put Emmaus on the map. Here is Aijalon at the eastern end, and notice again, it's right where the thumb is turning up toward the Beth Horons and where the north-south connecting route, the transverse route, is joining our Aijalon road up to Ramah. Aijalon right here in the middle by the thumb, and our road is turning right there up onto the Beth Horons, right at Aijalon, and here comes the north-south Shephelah connection into the Aijalon Valley, very near the city of Aijalon. Let's take an aerial view, as it were, of Aijalon. Actually, it's not aerial. We're standing up on, there's a monastery up there, if I remember right, very near where Emmaus is and very near where Aijalon is. We're looking at the thumb of the valley right now. We're looking north from this monastery. And there's the thumb of the valley heading up to the Beth Horon Ridge, which is right there. And Tel Aijalon, it's very difficult to see from this angle, but it's right there. Let's telephoto in and get a little better view of Tel Aijalon. And if you look at it from the north, you're going to see it a little better. Again, a very large mound where the city of Aijalon stood, overlooking the thumb of the valley as well as the north-south transverse route. Okay, so we've said if you could own a valley of Shephelah, which one would you want? You would want Aijalon, right? Why? Because you're connecting between Joppa and the hill country. All of the world is traveling down here on the coast, right? We've talked about Joppa, Lod, Aphek triangle, right? Lod is where the airport is now. Joppa, Lod, Aphek triangle. Lod is very near Gezer, right where the mouth is. Who's traveling the Joppa, Lod, Aphek triangle? All the nations of the world. Who wants to own that? All the nations of the world. Who's fighting over that? All the nations of the world. Everybody on the face of the planet wants that triangle and wants to control this valley heading up to the capital of the powerful nation of Israel at times. So all the world wants the Joppa, Lod, Aphek triangle. And God divides the land up between the 12 tribes, and look at what he gives to Dan. There's Joppa. There's Gezer. Here's Aijalon. Look at that. And what was Dan noted for as far as the tribes of Israel? It was noted for its size. And what was its size? We are the least. We are the least of the tribes of Israel. And he gives Dan the Joppa, Lod, Aphek triangle. How would you like to be a Danite? You know, you're sitting there and they're dividing up the land. It's like, oh, I can't wait to hear what we get. Oh, Dan, it's our turn. They draws a lot. Joppa, Lod, Aphek triangle. Moses, we have a question. Don't you know we're the smallest tribe? Lord, don't you see what you're... Yeah, I see what I'm doing. You need to trust me. Don't trust yourself, trust me. But the tribe of Dan had problems with that. They had problems with their faith. Not that any of you ever do that, or not that I ever have problems with my faith. And eventually they decided, we can't do this. We're not going to even try. This is too scary and too dangerous, because all the world wants that. The Amorites pressed the people of Dan back into the hill country and they didn't allow them to come down to the plain, the coastal plain. The Amorites persisted in dwelling in Mount Heres, in Aijalon, in Sha'albim, and Dan is pressed back into the mountains where they really don't even own much of any property. And so they decide, hey, we're hightailing it to a different place. And we're going to look at this story later when we look at the Jordan Rift. But they find a place way, way, way up there in the north where nobody is and nobody cares and nobody thinks about. And they move their tribe and up there and they build a city called Dan. And Israel is known north to south from Dan to Beersheba. What's Dan doing up there? Well, they're up there because they were given the Joppa, Lod, Aphek triangle. That's why they're up there. And they just didn't have faith to believe that God could give them that piece of property. Well, I don't know about you, but I'd probably have problems with that too. All right. So that's Gezer, Aijalon, Upper and Lower Beth Horon. These two cities were approximately 1 mile apart. They controlled this contiguous ridge that led from the valley to the hill country just north of Jerusalem. These cities are mentioned in Joshua's battle of the long day. So there are the Beth Horons, upper and lower, on this contiguous ridge that's coming through the thumb of the Aijalon Valley up onto the ridge and heading up there to Ramah. There comes our road right through the Beth Horons up to Ramah. An aerial view of the lower Beth Horon, upper Beth Horon. Here's the thumb of the valley. And the road is coming from the thumb of the valley onto this ridge. If you look at it carefully, you'll see that it is pretty much an unbroken ridge with some, bumps and lumps, but it's an unbroken ridge up here to Ramah, which is now Ramallah. And it is the way that the main road went, simply because there's a ridge that you could follow that most easily gets you up to Ramah. Let's take an aerial view. This is actually an aerial view, a very old one, a black and white one. I'm sorry, I can't find anything better, but this is a fantastic old aerial shot of lower Beth Horon, which is right beneath us, and upper Beth Horon, which is right there at the top of this hill. And you get a feel for this contiguous ridge that's heading right up here to, look over here at this thing. You're not going to want to travel on there. Here's a nice ridge, lower Beth Horon, upper Beth Horon. And now let's fly on up over upper Beth Horon right here to Ramah, which is going to be off in the distance. We're going to stand now in upper Beth Horon, literally. We're going to stand there and look down into the Aijalon Valley. So we're going to be standing right about here next to this road and looking down into the Aijalon. Here we are. Here's the road that we just saw coming up. Here's lower Beth Horon. And down here is the thumb of the Aijalon Valley, and you can see the smoke back there in the background of Tel Aviv and Joppa. So there is Gezer, this little bit's in the haze. I'm sorry, we'll get a telephoto in a minute. But in the haze there is Gezer guarding the mouth as the road comes in from Tel Aviv, Joppa, into the Aijalon Valley. It turns into this thumb and on to the Beth Horon Ridge. And up that road we see right next to us there up toward Ramah. Let's telephoto in to Gezer, that bald hill here overlooking the entrance and the thumb and the road up to Ramah. Okay, that's the Aijalon Valley. Let's go to the Sorek Valley, description and route. We're moving south now to the next valley. Remember, they're going to get narrower and narrower as we head south, but all of them are important. The Sorek Valley did lead directly. If you drew a straight line from Philistia to Jerusalem, this would be the valley, the Sorek Valley, directly from Philistia to Jerusalem as the crow flies. But the Sorek Valley was narrower than the Aijalon Valley, which makes it a little more difficult to travel. And it was much more restricted, particularly at the valley's eastern end. You're going to enter this valley, you're heading right toward Jerusalem, and then you're going to come to the V-shaped valleys of the watershed ridge. Remember that green section that I showed you? That's where the Sorek Valley is going to end up, right at that green section, and it's broken and twisted and almost impossible to travel up. There's no contiguous ridge. It's so broken and twisted, and so you're going to run into kind of a dead end at the eastern end of the Sorek. Because of the broken ridges and the rugged mountain streams descending from the watershed, the Aijalon River, the Sorek River, the Rephaim River, there was no contiguous ridge that led easily up to Jerusalem and to the hill country. So though this is the most direct route, as a bird flies, to Jerusalem, you run into a tangled mess that makes it impossible, virtually impossible, to get to Jerusalem straight from the Sorek Valley. The west to east road through the Sorek essentially hits this dead end, forcing major travel to turn onto the Shephelah connection. So you're going to hit that twisted mess at the eastern end. You're going to turn north up to the Aijalon Valley and end up at Ramah anyway, or you're going to turn right and go south down to the next valley, the Elah Valley, which is going to head up toward Bethlehem. And in either case, you're going to end up 6 miles from Jerusalem, which is 12 miles, Ramah and Bethlehem, 12 miles apart with Jerusalem right in the middle. It's just really interesting to look at that. There's Jerusalem straight through the Sorek Valley. But you see these three rivers, the Aijalon, Sorek, and Rephaim. The Rephaim goes right up to the western side of Jerusalem, and it's just a tangled mess. So here's the Sorek Valley, and here's where they planted the trees, which very easily now defines for us this tangled mess of the Aijalon, Sorek, and Rephaim that lead right up to Jerusalem, which makes impossible travel virtually impossible directly up to Jerusalem. Okay, let me talk about that twisted mess for just a minute, because it's going to help you see what's happening and why this is the case. By the way, what's good about that? I mean, why is it good to have Jerusalem there? Well, because it's harder to get to, right? We're starting to see. I mean, God is the one, remember, who did this. Okay, so Jerusalem is on this north-south watershed ridge, which we'll talk about later today when we get to the hill country. This north-south watershed ridge that runs kind of like this, if you can look up here for a minute. You've got a north-south watershed ridge running like this, and at some point during or after the flood, and this area is prone to earthquakes. We read about earthquakes in the Bible, right? So you've got a north-south watershed ridge, like the watershed of the Rockies, so to speak. And you've got a nice contiguous ridge, but at some point in time, as the waters receded and the earth was shifting, here's what happened. This ridge was broken. Let me put my hands the other way. It's kind of awkward to do this, but so here's the ridge, and at some point, an earthquake happened and it went like this. And when this one goes that way and the other one goes west and the top one goes north, what's going to happen right in the middle? If I had some molding clay and I could build a line of a mountain like this, and I could push the top that way and the bottom that way, what's going to happen right in the middle? It's going to break up and twist, and it's going to be a mess. And that's exactly what happened here. God chose where he's going to put Jerusalem, right? And God put Jerusalem in a place where God just happened to have pushed the clay left and right so that there would be a twist in the valleys and mountains just to the west of Jerusalem. And you just can't get to Jerusalem directly from the west. And God made it that way. And we're going to see where Jerusalem is later this morning is even more defendable because of where he specifically put it up on that watershed ridge. But I just want you to see that God is sculpting all of this for his people and for his purposes, and he's putting Jerusalem in a very specific place. Okay, so we're looking west now on our Google Earth kind of satellite map here. And here, remember Ekron? Gath and Ekron on the 35E from the Philistine cities. Gath was the southern one on 35E. Ekron is the northern one. And I said back then that Ekron is at the mouth of the Sorek Valley. And here's Ekron at the mouth of the Sorek. And here's this little narrow valley, much narrower than the Aijalon up here. This little narrow valley that's heading up straight toward Jerusalem, except you run into that twisted mess. Here's the Sorek Valley looking east toward the hill country, and our road is heading right through this little valley, but hits that twisted mess at the eastern end. And so we can't travel that way easily to Jerusalem, though some Philistines did sneak up that way once, the Rephaim, and David had to fight them on those hills. But you're going to intersect with the north-south transverse route, and you're going to either head north up to the Aijalon and up to Ramah, or south down to the next valley, Elah, and up toward Bethlehem. And that's exactly where God put Jerusalem, right at the other end of that twisted mess. Despite its more difficult access to the hills, the Sorek was important both to the Philistines and Israel due to its direct proximity to Jerusalem. I mean, you don't want to just forget it's there. You don't want to just not defend it, because there are ways, if you have skilled military men, to get up those hills. It's not like you're going to take cargo and, ship goods and stuff. But if you want military guys to sneak up those hills, they can do it, and you can attack Jerusalem. As I said, the Philistines did it once on the Rephaim, which just went up right west of Jerusalem. So you still want to control the Sorek Valley. It's important to Philistines and to Israel due to its proximity to Jerusalem. 2 Samuel chapter 5. The Philistine city of Ekron that we mentioned yesterday controlled the mouth of this valley, just like Gezer controls the mouth of the Aijalon. Now Ekron, a Philistine city, is controlling the mouth of the Sorek Valley. Sorek and Philistia were the stage for the life and ministry of Samson. When you think of the Sorek Valley, think of Samson. This is his home turf, Judges 13 through 16. The Sorek Valley, all right? Let's talk about, there's Ekron at its mouth. Let's talk about its other cities. Here's a general view of the Sorek. I don't want to really orient you here. I'm just standing on one side, the northern side, looking south. I just want you to see how much narrower this is. I do want you to see that it's green, it's fertile. What else do you see down there? Water that they're preserving. They're growing grains and olive trees and vineyards, just like they were in the days of Samson. I'll show you that in a moment. But here's the narrower Sorek Valley. Let's look at its cities. Zorah and Eshtaol we're going to combine as twin cities, and then Timnah and Bethshemesh. Zorah and Eshtaol, these two towns were closely situated on or near a small lateral hill at the northeast end of the valley. I realize that's hard for you to picture right now, but I'll give you a picture. They were Jewish cities in the times of the Judges. They overlooked the Shephelah connection as it went north toward Aijalon. Okay, so it's down kind of at the eastern end, very near that twisted mess, overlooking the Shephelah connection as it heads north. And there's a little lateral hill there on which or near which they sit. And I mention them because this is where Samson grew up. Judges 13, and he was buried here when he died in, bringing the temple down on the Philistines. Judges 13. The people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. The Lord gave them in the hand of the Philistines. There was a certain man of Zorah, of the tribe of Dan. It's all making sense, right? Whose name was Manoah. His wife was barren. Skipped down. The woman bore a son, called his name Samson. The young man grew. The Lord blessed him. The Spirit of the Lord began to stir him at Mahanadan. That is the region of Dan between Zorah and Eshtaol. That's why I mentioned these towns. And there they are, Zorah and Eshtaol, at the eastern end, kind of the eastern end of the valley. There's a lateral hill here. They sit on this hill. Zorah is up on the top of this hill, and it's overlooking the north-south Shephelah connection. Zorah here, and Eshtaol. Zorah and Eshtaol. This is Samson's stomping grounds when he's a kid. All right, so there they are. Here's Aijalon up here in the Aijalon Valley, right? Here's Zorah and Eshtaol, and here's our Sorek Valley. Zorah and Eshtaol here on this lateral hill. The Shephelah connection is coming up this direction, heading up to Aijalon. So here's the Shephelah connection, right past Zorah and Eshtaol, and here's the Sorek Valley, Ekron, down there at its mouth. Okay, let's look at Timnah next, another city important to this valley and important to the Samson story. Timnah, or Timnath. Timnah was located in the Sorek Valley between Ekron at the mouth and Bethshemesh, or Zorah Eshtaol, at the eastern end. It's kind of in the middle of the valley. Timnah. It was a Philistine city in the days of the Judges. So Timnah is a Philistine city. Zorah, Eshtaol, Beth-Shemesh, which is very near, we'll look at it in a minute, are Israelite cities. They're about 5 miles apart, I believe. About 5 miles from Beth-Shemesh, Zorah, Eshtaol, to Timnah. Okay? A Philistine city. It stood on the opposite or west side of that lateral hill from Zorah and Eshtaol. In other words, it's right across the hill from Samson's home. He lived up on top of the hill. And that's important because Samson fell in love with a Philistine girl from Timnah. You know, kids wander all over their neighborhood, and 5 miles away is this Philistine town, and he meets this beautiful girl, and he wants to marry her. Delilah was also from the Sorek Valley, according to Judges 16. Different gal, but we know her as well. Samson went down to Timnah. It literally was down the hill. If he went around the hill, down the hill, and down toward the coast, right, which would be downhill. He went down to Timnah. By the way, down in the Bible is more about elevation than it is north south. We in our thinking, we like to talk about south down, north up, right? But not in the Bible. Down means elevation, and up means elevation most of the time. Samson went down to Timnah. At Timnah, he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines. He came and told his father and mother, get her for me as wife. There's Timnah, kind of right in the middle of the Sorek Valley, right across the hill from Zorah and Eshtaol. Here's Zorah and Eshtaol. There's Timnah. And all Samson had to do was either walk across the hill or down the hill or around the hill, and there he is, and he meets this girl. And of course, the rest of the story we'll talk about in just a minute. Beth-Shemesh is a Jewish city. It controls the eastern end of the Sorek Valley. Zorah and Eshtaol we mentioned because of Samson. Beth-Shemesh is really the fortress city of Israel, let's say the defending city of Israel, that they control at the eastern end, the Shephelah connection. This is an Israelite city. All right. Timnah is a Philistine city. So Beth-Shemesh is Israel's controlling city at the east end of the Sorek Valley, overlooking both this east-west Sorek route and the north-south Shephelah connection, right where it kind of tees with the mess that was created by the earthquake that turns everything onto the Shephelah connection. Beth-Shemesh overlooks that intersection, an Israelite border town and a Levitical city. I mean, we clearly see it's a border town because 5 miles away is a Philistine city. This is where the ark returned from Philistia, and the minutes this city were judged. It returned here from Philistia. What town in Philistia did it end up at? Remember, it went to Ashdod, then it went to Gath, then it went to Ekron, which is right at the mouth of the Sorek Valley. And they put it on a cart and sent it up to, Israel, if that's where the cows would go. And they ended up at Beth-Shemesh. And it's a Levitical city, and they opened the ark. That was a mistake. And you can read about that in 1 Samuel 6, and we'll talk more about that story a little later on. But there's Beth-Shemesh at the eastern end of the Sorek Valley, an Israelite city that's controlling both the east-west route coming in from Philistia and Ekron and the north-south connection as it is all blocked off by this mess of the Keshlon Sorek and Rephaim. Here's our satellite view, and there's Beth-Shemesh down there at the bottom. And there is a nice little tell, pretty good sized tell there that you can visit today. And here is the valley coming in toward Beth-Shemesh. We are flying over the valley. We're flying over the hills. We're looking down toward the Mediterranean. You can see the Mediterranean way out there in the haze. The coastal plain is here. There's Ekron, if we could actually see it well. Timnah is right here. Here comes our Sorek Valley. There's a road right smack down the middle of the valley today. Here's the Sorek Valley. Our Shephelah connection is going this direction, down to our next valley to the south, up to the Aijalon Valley to the north, and there's this Beth-Shemesh right at this intersection, east-west, north-south, Tel Beth-Shemesh. We're looking now towards Zorah and Eshtaol. We kind of flown around and looking north now. Timnah is off to the left. Beth-Shemesh is off to the left, but I wanted to show you Zorah and Eshtaol on this lateral hill here. Zorah is up on the hill. Eshtaol is a little closer to the valley. The Shephelah connection is heading right past Zorah and Eshtaol to get to Aijalon. Here's Timnah on the other side of the hill, and this is Beth-Shemesh just off of our picture to the left, controlling this intersection, north-south, east-west. So again, here's Beth-Shemesh right there. Let's zoom down to Beth-Shemesh. Let's go down to Beth-Shemesh. Let's stand on Beth-Shemesh and let's look at Zorah and then at Timnah. We're standing now on Tel Beth-Shemesh. There are always ruins to see, things to see. But as you stand there, you want to get a control of the region and how everything's flowing. And as we look to the north, a little bit to the northeast, you see Zorah. Zorah is easy to find because it's where this, it almost looks like a lone tree. I don't know why it's this way, but there's this kind of barren tree sticking up right here. That's Zorah. That's Samson's hometown. And Eshtaol is off here to the right. And here's our Sorek Valley. To our right is that tangled mess that you really can't travel up. And then to the left, let's turn left and look down toward the mouth of the valley. It's going to go around this hill right here. And Timnah's back behind the hill. You can't see it here, but let's move down. Let's stand about right over here and look down at Timnah. Here's Tel Timnah. It's kind of a low hill. It's not really a defense city. It's not the kind of city that's at an intersection or whatever, but people lived in this valley because it's fertile. You know, you're growing things. It's easy to farm here. In fact, you can see the Sorek River running, you know, the water source running right past Timnah, Tel Timnah. This is where Samson's girlfriend lived. Look at the vineyards and the wheat fields and the trees that are growing there even today, much like in the days of Samson. Judges 15, after a while in the time of wheat harvest, Samson visited his wife. Remember, he was going to go visit his wife. Dad wouldn't let him see his wife. He got mad at dad. And so he went and caught 300 foxes. He took torches and turned the foxes tail to tail. Put one torch in the middle between two tails. So he ties together 300 foxes. He ties their tails together, puts a firebrand there, lights the firebrands, and sends them where? He set fire to the torches. He released them into the standing grain of the Philistines. Now it makes sense why there would be grain fields there. It's a broad, fertile valley. Wheat is growing there. Barley is growing there, thus burning up both the shocks and the standing grain, along with the vineyards and groves of usually olive trees or maybe orange trees or whatever they're growing there. But this is a fertile area. I wish I could find it. I couldn't even find one on the internet. You can find everything on the internet, but you can't find it anymore. And for some reason, Israel doesn't do this anymore. But you know our pictures when you go out west, pictures of by the highway of Smokey the Bear. You know, don't start forest fires. Back in the day, and I took a picture of one of these. I couldn't find it, and I went on the internet. I couldn't find it. But back in the day, Israel, during fire seasons, had signs like our Smokey the Bear, but they had two foxes together with a torch coming out of their backside. So I think it's probably politically incorrect to tie foxes together and put torches there, so they don't use that sign anymore. And I wish I would have loved to have shown you that. But for years and years and years, that was their Smokey the Bear. Fascinating to me. All right. You travel down the Sorek Valley today, and what do you see? You see wheat fields, you see groves of trees, and you see vineyards. 2024, you can go there today, and this is what you're going to see. I'm guessing, unless it's changed since 2009. But what they grew then is what they grow now, and this is what Samson saw as he walked down this valley and interacted with the Philistines. All right. So here are our 5 valleys, the Aijalon. As we move south, the Sorek. Our next valley is the Elah, then the Guvrin, and the Lachish. We have these last 3 to cover. Let's move to the Elah Valley. Description and route. The Elah Valley connected Philistia with the hill country near Bethlehem. So, directly from Philistia up to the hill country, you're going to end up at Bethlehem. And again, there's a contiguous ridge at the end of the Elah Valley. It's called the Husan Ridge. That name's not important. It's not found in the Bible. But there is a contiguous ridge that's going to get you up to the north-south watershed, and that gets you to Bethlehem, which is 6 miles south of Jerusalem. Now, the Sorek is the valley that leads directly to Jerusalem, but you can't get there easily because of the twisted mess. The Elah Valley is going to be our second easiest access, is what I'm trying to say. The Aijalon was the easiest, the best. The Elah is going to be the second best as far as access to the watershed because, and proximity to Jerusalem, it's going to lead directly up to Bethlehem. So I would call it probably the second most important of our 5 valleys. Now we're getting into the life of David. Samson grew up in the Sorek. David grew up, well, where was David born? Bethlehem. And if Samson's a kid who's wandering around his neighborhood, right? David's a shepherd boy. He's not just wandering around. He's flocking the sheep where he can find grass. He's going to find grass down here in the valley in the times when he needs to move off of the hills. And this is directly down a ridge from Bethlehem. He knows this neck of the woods like the back of his hand. And so this is David stuff. And the city that's going to be, the Philistine city that's going to be at the mouth of the Elah Valley, getting ahead of our notes here, but at the mouth of the Elah Valley is the Philistine city of Gath on 35E, right? Gath, the southern of the 35E, Ekron, the northern of the 35E Philistine cities. Ekron is at the mouth of the Sorek. Now Gath, the south of Ekron, Gath, south of Ekron, is going to be at the mouth of the Elah Valley. That's the home of Goliath. David's from Bethlehem, Goliath's from Gath, and here they are going to be, fighting over and in the Elah Valley. So Gath is at the mouth, protecting the mouth of this valley, and Gath is that huge tell, and it's a Philistine Pentapolis city. Here's our valley. There is Gath at its western end. There's the Husan Ridge at the eastern end, and Bethlehem is right at the top of the Husan Ridge, just south of Jerusalem, about 6 miles. Here's our satellite view. And here is the Elah Valley. Notice north of there is the Sorek Valley that we just looked at, and the twisted mess at its east end. Here is the Elah Valley. They're narrower. They're more difficult to see, to define, so to speak. But when you get to the eastern end here of the Elah Valley, you're going to be able to find a ridge, the Husan Ridge, that leads up to Bethlehem. The Elah Valley, right? There are roads east and west. And remember, we have this north-south Shephelah connection that's joining all of these valleys kind of at their midsection in a way. And that's going to become important as well to the Elah Valley. One other thing I want to mention about the Elah Valley now that we're looking at the road. Notice that there's a twist in right where the Shephelah connection comes in. There's a twist in the east-west road. There's a hill right here. I like to call it the hill that's in the way because because it's going to be in the way of our pictures and it's really in the way of the road. The road has to twist around this hill, but that's going to be important to our discussion later. So the east-west route of the Elah Valley and the north-south Shephelah connection. Let's look at this from the west to the east. So we're looking east. The Mediterranean's behind us. The coastal plain is just immediately behind us. The Shephelah is right in front of us. These low hills leading up to the watershed. There's that twisted mess at the end of the Sorek Valley, Zor Eshtaol Beshemesh. And here's the Elah Valley, twisting around here, the hill in the way. And it's going to catch a ridge right here up to Bethlehem. All right? So here comes our road past Gath. Gath is protecting the mouth. Around Azekah, twisting around the little hill that's in the way, past Soko, up the Husan Ridge to Bethlehem. Notice how narrow this valley is. But it's very clearly an east-west valley that is giving us access from Philistia to the hill country. Here comes our Shephelah connection. This is just a general overview of the valley. I want to give you a feel for it before I get you into the details. Here's that hill that's in the way. So our valley's running like this, and here's the watershed ridge, and Bethlehem's going to be right up in here. But I want you to get a feel here just for the narrowness of this valley. All right, let's look at its cities. We've already looked at Gath. That's a Philistine city. It says its mouth. The other three cities that we want to see, or things that we want to see, are Azekah, Soko, and Adullam. Azekah is the most important, well, next to Gath, maybe in competition with Gath as the most important city of this valley. I think if I had to choose between Gath at the mouth or Azekah right here in the middle at the heart of the valley, I probably would choose Azekah, because it is controlling the valley east-west, but it's also right on that north-south Shephelah connection, and it's sitting on a very high hill on the southern rim of the Elah Valley, right where the road twists around Azekah to get around that other mountain. It's halfway up the valley, 5 miles east of Gath. Sennacherib, who is the king of Assyria, miles and miles away, but Assyria wants to conquer the world, and to conquer the world in Egypt, before you conquer Egypt, you have to conquer Israel, because you don't want to get down to Egypt and have Israel as your enemy, and now they can cut you off from home, right? If you're going to conquer Egypt, you've got to conquer Israel and subdue them before you turn your back on them and go into Egypt. And here's an Assyrian, Sennacherib, a famous Assyrian king who wants Azekah, who holds Azekah, and he calls it the Eagle's Nest, because it's up on this high hill overlooking everything going on in the Shephelah. Remember, the Elah is also the middle of our 5 valleys. If you have 5 valleys, there's one in the middle, right? 2 on each side. And that's the Elah is in the middle, and Azekah is in the middle of the middle. I mean, it's just such an important city. It's controlling the whole Shephelah in a sense, right in the heart of the Elah Valley, up on a very high hill that an Assyrian king wants and owns for a while. It controls both the east-west road through the Elah Valley, as well as the north-south Shephelah connection, and therefore is a most valuable strategic possession for many armies. If you're Solomon, I'm giving my students a quiz. Okay, what valley do you want most of all? Well, I want the Aijalon, because it's the easiest to travel, and it's my way to the port. What city would I, if I got one city in the Shephelah, and my students struggle with this one, and I do too. I mean, if you only got one city in the Shephelah, and you're Solomon, which one do you want? I mean, Gezer is one you really want, but Azekah is like right in the heart of everything. I don't know which one to choose. It's like, can't I just have them both? This is such an important city. There's Azekah right in the heart of the Elah Valley and right in the heart of the Shephelah. right? There it is, Azekah. Gath to the west, Soko and the Husan Ridge to the east. Beth Shemesh is up there to the north. And here comes our road from Gath, from the coast, from Philistia, winding around Azekah on the southern rim, around this hill that's in the way, and on through the broadest part of the valley up to the Husan Ridge and up to Bethlehem. And there sits Azekah. Here's our north-south Shephelah connection. And Azekah is right at that intersection. And we're right smack in the middle of the Shephelah. If you ever travel to Israel, and if you are ever able to get to the Shephelah, and if you get to the Elah Valley, if you can get on top of Azekah, you don't always have time. But I think they made the road easier to get to back in the day when we had to actually climb the thing. But you want to get on top of Azekah if you can. All right. We're looking now basically back toward, we're looking from the east to the west. We have just flown, let's say, out of Bethlehem. We're flying toward the Mediterranean Sea, which would be straight in front of us. Here's the Elah Valley. Here's our hill that's in the way. So our east-west road is going to wind around this little hill in the way and then around Azekah and head out there to Gath and the coast. And there's Azekah. Here's our north-south Shephelah connection going this direction. And here's the main, kind of the heart of the Elah Valley, but there's Azekah guarding this whole thing. It's just a fantastic thing to see. So here comes our road from Gath around the hill that's in the way into the heart of the Elah Valley, and there sits Azekah guarding this connection. Let's fly over the hill in the way, so to speak, and let's look at Azekah, which is right there. And actually, in the haze, I'm sorry, but it is hazy. There's Gath. Tel Gath is back here in the distance. So here comes our road from Gath, winding around Azekah. In fact, there's the road right there, the modern road, coming from Gath, around Azekah, around the hill in the way, which is under us, and heading on toward Bethlehem behind us. And then our Shephelah connection is just going north and south, right past Azekah. Look at this high hill. That's what I want you to see. Up on this high hill is Tel Azekah. Let's move now to a little different angle. Our hill in the way is right here. Here's Azekah. We're actually kind of flying over the Shephelah connection right here. Gath is off to, let's see if I have all this marked. There's Azekah right in the middle of our picture. Gath is then off to our left. And the hill in the way is right here. And the road to Bethlehem is heading here. The heart of the Elah Valley is kind of below us. And the Shephelah connection is right beneath us. And there sits Azekah guarding this whole intersection. I hope this is making sense to you. I don't want to lose you. All right. There's a telephoto aerial view of Azekah, and if possible, we want to get to the top. I mean, look at how high this is. Here's a road down here. Here's some vehicles down here. Here's the, some of the water that's running through the Elah Valley, the Elah stream, the brook, and here sits Azekah. Let's stand on Azekah now and look at the hill in the way and into the heart of the Elah Valley. Then we'll turn around and look at Gath. We're on top of Azekah now. We actually saw this picture before. We're standing on top of Azekah. Here's the hill that's in the way. You come from Gath, which is behind us, and the road's coming around from our left, and then it's coming around here, joining the Shephelah connection, but it's turning east again down the heart of the Elah Valley. Here's the watershed ridge. We're going to catch the Husan here, and we're going to get up to Bethlehem. And this is the Elah Valley as it winds past Azekah. This is the Shephelah connection. We've turned around now, and we're looking at Tel Gath, which is right here. Tel Gath from Azekah, this is the home of Goliath. And it's a very large hill, it's a very large tell, and it's guarding the mouth, the narrow mouth of the Elah Valley as it comes around this way and over to Azekah. The coast then is in the distance, the coastal plain, and the Mediterranean Sea. Soko. Soko is toward the eastern end of the valley, 3 miles east of Azekah. Now we're into the heart of the Elah Valley, and Soko is involved in the fight with David and Goliath, very near Soko, down toward the eastern end of the valley, east of Azekah, about 3 miles around the hill that's in the way and on the southern rim. We're standing on Azekah again, and here is Soko down here toward the eastern end, Tel Soko, which is involved in the story of David and Goliath. We're flying over now toward the Watershed Ridge. Bethlehem's up in here, Watershed Ridge, Husan Ridge. Here's the road through the Elah Valley, and there's Tel Soko. Azekah is behind us, right? And this is the heart of the valley where David is going to fight Goliath. Soko has to do with that battle. There's the brook Elah, which is important to the story, right? These valleys are here because the watershed is shedding water down into these valleys. There are little rivulets running that are creating these valleys and forming these valleys. And here's remember the Sorek River ran right down and through the Sorek Valley. Here's the Elah, the brook Elah running right through the heart of the Elah Valley, and that's important to the David and Goliath story as well. We're looking now, let me back up. We're going to be down on this road right here, and we're going to just look right up at Soko, and there she be, Tel Soko. We're standing on Soko now. We're looking back toward the Husan Ridge. There's the road we were on a moment ago, looking toward the Husan Ridge back in here and up toward Bethlehem, which would be in that area. Let's turn, I think, to the left. And now we're looking at Azekah. There's our road again. And here's Azekah. Here's the hill that's in the way. And here is the heart of the Elah Valley, the brook Elah, and so forth. This is where the David and Goliath story is going to take place, which we will look at in a moment. Ruins on Soko, fine, there's ruins everywhere. Here's a broad view. Here's a, what do you call them, panoramic view from Soko looking across at that hill that's in the way, because that's going to be the hill where the Israelites are standing, and the Philistines are going to be probably here on the south side. The text is going to tell us between Soko and Azekah. So a panoramic view of the Elah Valley from Soko. The southern rim is the approximate vantage point. We're standing, as it were, where the Philistines are. Some put them on the opposite sides, but I put them on this side. We're standing on the side with Soko, between Soko and Azekah. The Philistines are standing here, and there's Israel on the other side, and Goliath is marching down into the middle of this valley and challenging Israel and Israel's God. The Philistines were encamped near here, probably on the southern rim, while King Saul's forces are on the northern rim on the opposite side there. The Philistines gathered for battle. Let's look at what the text says. Here's what it says. The Philistines were gathered for battle at Soko. That's on the southern rim. We just saw it. We were standing there. Which belongs to Judah. The Philistines are standing on Soko, which belongs to Judah. They're fighting over this valley. Saul and the men of Israel were gathered and encamped in the valley of Elah, technically not in the valley. They're on the hill. We'll see that in a minute. They drew up in line for battle against the Philistines. The Philistines stood on the mountain on the one side. Really, it's a hill. They stood on the hill on the one side. Israel stood on the hill on the other side with the valley between them. There came out from the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath. So here we are. The Philistines on the hill, the southern rim between Soko and Azekah, the Israelites on the northern slopes on the hill that's in the way, facing south, and there's the brook Elah in the middle, probably winding its way through here, and the story continues as you know. We're looking at Azekah now, and again, here's the valley of Elah, Soko. So the Philistines are going to be over here. The Israelites are going to be on this side. And here's the brook Elah. All right. Okay. David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight the Philistine. You know the story. He took his staff in his hand. He chose 5 smooth stones from the brook and put them in his shepherd's pouch. His sling was in his hand. He approached the Philistines. Here's the brook Elah. And if you have time, your bus will stop and you get to walk down in there, and we're all looking for 5 smooth stones, and we're putting them in our bags, and we're taking them. Oh, I need 5 for each grandkid, so now I need 25 stones. And I was like, and I've got this theory. You know, Israel's building someplace way up in the north, and they've got to clear all these rocks away from somewhere. And so what are we going to do? Let's put them in a dump truck. We'll take them down to the Elah Valley. We'll dump them in the brook, and all the American tourists are going to go down in this river and haul all these stones away and take them to America. Let's just dump them all here. So David only used 1. Yeah, chances are you might find one of the other 4. I don't know, but chances are you're getting stones from Gilead somewhere. Who knows? Anyway, it's fun to go down there. It's amazing to. All right, so here we are. Remember my story about Mom? You know, oh, now I can picture, you know, you're doing the laundry in the basement and the kids are in the backyard and you've got to run upstairs, blah, blah. Well, here's the David and Goliath story. We all had this picture in our head, but now we get to see it. We get to walk down in this creek and pick up some stones. I have them on my desk, I will admit. Philistines arose and came and drew near to David. David ran quickly. You know the story. I don't need to tell you the story. God defeated Goliath through David. David stood over the Philistine, took his sword, drew it out of his sheath, killed him, and off with his head. The Philistines saw their champion was dead. They fled. Guess where they fled? And the men of Israel and Judah rose with a shout and pursued the Philistine as far as Gath at the mouth of this valley and the gates of Ekron at the mouth of the Sorek valley. So they flee from Soko region to Gath at the mouth of the valley and to Ekron at the mouth of the Sorek, because these are city-states that have coalesced to fight against Israel in the Elah Valley, and they've been defeated, and they're running home. Gath and Ekron. It all makes sense now, right? It's just so much fun to see that. One other place in the Elah Valley we need to talk about, and that's Aijalon. Aijalon was situated at the very, very eastern end of the Elah Valley. David and his mighty men would meet in the caves here. Okay, think about, again, water running off of these high mountain ridge, the watershed ridge, down into these softer, more chalky kind of Shephelah valleys. And as water runs down, it's going to carve out these caves down in the softer rock of the lower valleys of the Shephelah. And David's a kid. I mean, he grew up at Bethlehem. This is right down the hill from where he lived. He knows where all these caves are. He's been down in this area. He's taken his sheep down there. He's played in these caves. And now he is becoming the king after Saul. He has his mighty men. Saul's not happy with him. He's got to flee. He's hiding. He's running. He's meeting men are meeting up with him. And so he says, oh, these caves at Aijalon are going to be a great place to meet. We'll have protection. We'll have all that. And in 1 Samuel 22 and 23, that's happening here at the caves of Aijalon at the eastern end of the Elah Valley, just down the ridge from Bethlehem. So here's Aijalon, way down here at the eastern end of the valley. Gath, Azekah, Soko, and Aijalon, the Husan Ridge, is actually up in here. But this is David's neck of the woods. All right. Here's an aerial view of Aijalon with the hill country and the watershed ridge in the distance here. This is the hill of Aijalon. Here it is from ground level. And I've never been able to explore that and go down in the caves, but that's it. All right, so that's the Elah Valley. We've done the Aijalon, we've done the Sorek, we've done the Elah. It's fun, isn't it? 2 more. The Guvrin. These are not as complex. They're narrower. They won't take us as much time, and we need to get done here. The Guvrin Valley at its eastern end narrowed and was forced southward by rugged hills. So the Guvrin Valley at the eastern end, as it approaches the watershed, is kind of like the Sorek. It runs into kind of a mess. And so when you get to the eastern end, you can't just go straight up. You're going to have to turn a little bit south, and the next valley, the Lachish Valley and the Guvrin Valley, the roads are going to meet as they head up toward, actually, Hebron is going to be the city that they will discover up on the watershed ridge. So at its eastern end, it gets narrow. It's forced south toward the Lachish Valley, our last valley, by these rugged hills. And they didn't really facilitate easy east-west travel into the hill country. Once again, like the Sorek, you're going to have to kind of turn and go a little bit of a different way. So here's the Guvrin Valley. And you will notice at the eastern end, I've drawn the roads connecting here from our next valley, the Lachish and the Guvrin. They kind of connect because this, once again, right in here is kind of difficult and broken. And these roads are going to join each other and climb a ridge up to Hebron, which the Guvrin Valley is not terribly accessible east-west, but it's kind of important more because of Maresha and the Shephelah connection. So here is the Guvrin Valley, very, very narrow, incredibly narrow as we go farther south. Here's the broken area here, much more, we're farther south, it's drier, it's more like a wilderness kind of area. And so you'll notice that even the valley itself turns a bit south, and the road is going to head a little more south toward the Lachish Valley and up toward Hebron there. Very, very narrow. More important is the north-south Shephelah connection, and the city of Maresha, which is going to be our most important city, is overlooking that junction. We're looking again kind of to the east. The coast is behind us. Philistia is behind us, more around the area of, Ashdod and Gaza toward the south. You can see the river, the little river that forms this valley running off of the watershed. Very, very narrow, heading up to the hills of Judah, but very constricted down there. It's all going to turn kind of south. There goes our route through the Guvrin Valley. More important, as I said, is the north-south Shephelah connection coming here through the Guvrin Valley. This is general overview. Again, I just want to give you a feel for how narrow this valley is now that we're looking at comparing the Aijalon, Sorek, Elah, and Guvrin becoming much more narrow and much more constricted. Here's our north-south Shephelah connection beneath us. All right. The cities of the Guvrin, basically two. Maresha is the most important. Moresheth Gath I mentioned for a reason. I'll show you in a moment. But let's look at Maresha. Maresha is the controlling city. It's the main city. It's the chief city. It's the city you want to own in the Guvrin Valley. It controls this valley and mainly the intersection with the east-west route and the north-south Shephelah connection. It's a very large tell. It's a very significant tell. People wanted to own it. People did own it. People conquered it and destroyed it and built on it over and over again because it's overlooking both the east-west and the north-south Shephelah connection. That's Maresha. Maresha is right beneath us. We're oriented north. So there's Maresha. Here is the Guvrin Valley. I've always been a little surprised at how far Maresha is from the road itself. But I guess because it's a high hill and it probably had water access and it could at least overlook and see the road and therefore control it. You could put guards down there. But in any case, it just always has surprised me a little bit as to how far it is from the actual intersection. But there it is, and it's a very significant city and did control this valley. There is the tell, Maresha. You can see it from quite a distance right here in the middle of our picture. Here is an aerial view of Tel Maresha as it's controlling the intersection here of the north-south and the east-west route. Very large Tel. It is interesting to visit, but we're not going to spend any more time there at Maresha. I mentioned Moresheth Gath. It's the home of the prophet Micah. And I probably maybe shouldn't take time to do this in my Bible geography, but I'm gonna, because I'm an Old Testament guy and I like Micah and I like what he says, and it helps us understand the importance of the Shephelah. And he lived there because Micah prophesied of the coming Assyrian invasion. Remember Sennacherib and the eagle's nest and Ezekah? Micah is prophesying the Assyrian invasion. Now remember, the Assyrians never conquered Judah. They did conquer Israel in the north and carried them, well, they actually, they carried half of them away and infiltrated them. They intermixed them, so you end up with the Samaritans. So Assyria did conquer the northern tribes. They never did conquer the Judah and the southern tribes, but they sure tried. And Micah prophesied of their coming. And he lived in that neck of the woods. He prophesied the Assyrian invasion, which secured the Shephelah before attacking the hill country. If you're going to conquer Israel, you have to conquer the capital, Jerusalem. If you're going to conquer Jerusalem in the hills, you've got to conquer what? The Shephelah. You're not going to go right up to Jerusalem if you don't control the Shephelah. The Shephelah is the buffer zone. You've got to conquer the coast. You've got to conquer the Shephelah before you can conquer Jerusalem. And that's the way it's going to happen, or has to happen. And there is Moresheth Gath on a hill. It really is overlooking the north-south Shephelah connection. But most importantly, it's the home of Micah as he prophesies the coming Assyrian invasion. All right? We're standing on Maresha, and we see in the distance this hill. It's really kind of hard to see exactly where Moresheth Gath is, but it's on this hill overlooking the north-south Shephelah connection. And Micah grows up on this hill looking right down on Maresha, which the Assyrians want to conquer before they can conquer Jerusalem. And Moresheth Gath is right on top of, you can see where they've excavated and they throw the stuff over the side and it kind of runs down. But anyway, Moresheth Gath is up here on top of this hill. Here's our Shephelah connection. South to Maresha, north to the Elah Valley and Ezekah. All right. Let's go to our last valley, the Lachish Valley. Description and route, the southern door to the Shephelah. So we're in the far south end of the Shephelah. Lachish is going to be sitting right at the connection between the east-west road, again, and the north-south road. You'll see now that Maresha and Lachish, and at the north-south Shephelah connection is really, the north-south Shephelah connection is more important down here than the east-west road. Okay, up north, it's more about the east-west travel, but here, it's more about who can control the southern door to the Shephelah. If you can control Lachish, and if you can control Maresha, you control everything going in and out of the Shephelah from the south. It's the southern door to the Shephelah, and so it was very important. It was a huge fortress city, like Maresha. The Guvrin and Lachish routes joined at the eastern end as they entered the hill country and head up to Hebron. Samson used this route through the Lachish Valley to carry off the gates of Gaza. When Samson was hanging around Delilah and she was down in Gaza, remember the southernmost of the Philistine Pentapolis, right outside of Egypt is Gaza. That's where Delilah was and Samson was, and she tried to trick him, and it didn't work the first time, and he got mad at the Philistines, and he hauled off the gates of Gaza, and it says he took them up toward Hebron. I don't think he took them all the way to Hebron, but he took them up toward Hebron, which means he would have had to gone straight from Gaza across to the the Lachish Valley, which leads straight up toward Hebron. So that would have happened right here. There's Gaza. Here's Hebron. Remember, even the Guvrin road connects with this Lachish road heading up to Hebron. And here's how Samson would have carried those gates. All right. Here's our aerial view. We are looking, again, north-oriented. We see Maresha and Moresheth Gath north of us, and here's the Lachish Valley. Very, very, very narrow. Very, very kind of twisted and so forth. And Lachish is right there at its heart. Here comes Samson up toward Hebron. There is the constriction for the Guvrin Valley, so that route is going to join here and head up to Hebron. And more importantly to this area is the north-south Shephelah connection. And Lachish is the first city you come to as you head into the Shephelah from the south. Lachish is the south door, the back door to the Shephelah. Maresha is functioning in very much the same way. So here is Lachish. We're looking toward the hills to the east, the hill country. There's Hebron. Our pen for Hebron's right there. This narrow little twisted valley here. Narrow and narrow as you head south. Here's the Guvrin. Here's the Lachish. And on up toward Hebron. There comes our road through the Lachish Valley. And here comes our north-south Shephelah connection. And Tel Lachish, unlike Maresha, Tel Lachish is right smack at that intersection. You have to go right next to Lachish to get east-west or north-south. And it's a huge, huge tell. This is, again, just a general view. I want you to see how narrow it is, how more constricted it is the farther south here we get. Let's look at the city of Lachish. Lachish was a mighty fortress city that controlled the valley at its center where the east and the west, north-south routes met. Its strategic importance is evident from the time of Joshua. In Joshua 10, we read about it, including the Assyrian invasion in Kings, Chronicles, Isaiah, Micah, and the Babylonian conquest in Jeremiah. These invasions all mention Lachish. Lachish is mentioned many, many times in the Old Testament as a fortress city and the southern doorway to the Shephelah. Everybody on the face of the planet who wanted to be anyone wanted to control Lachish. And again, there she sits. All right. Here is Tel Lachish, an aerial view. It's absolutely huge. It's amazing. It's interesting to visit if you can get that far south. Here's the east-west route coming right around Lachish. You can see the Lachish, river, so to speak, which is cutting the valley, running right next to Lachish. So here's our east-west. This is going out to Gaza. This is heading up to Hebron. And then our north-south Shephelah connection is, again, right down here at the base of Tel Lachish. Here is the Tel. Let's read a little bit about Lachish in 2 Chronicles. Rehoboam, right? After the division of the kingdom, you have David, Solomon, and Solomon's son Rehoboam becomes king after him, and that's when everything falls apart. The northern tribes divide off, Jeroboam, and now you have Israel in the north and Judah in the south. Rehoboam is the king of Judah, and it says Rehoboam lived in Jerusalem, and he built cities for defense of Judah. To defend Judah, where do you build? Aijalon, Zorah, Gath, Azekah. Does he sound familiar? Now notice I have reordered. I'm not giving you exactly the order in Chronicles, but I want you to see the cities we've talked about. He lives in Jerusalem. He's building cities to defend Jerusalem and Judah. And what are they? Aijalon, Zorah, Gath, Azekah, Soko, Adullam, Maresha, and Lachish, and Hebron. Fortified cities in Judah and in Benjamin. Made them strong, put commanders in them, stored food, oil, wine, shields, spears, and all the cities. So he held Judah and Benjamin. But Assyria is going to attack anyway. Sennacherib, king of Assyria, who is besieging Lachish with all his forces, sent his servants to Jerusalem to Hezekiah, king of Judah, to see if he would concede. He's besieging Lachish before he can defeat Jerusalem. But if I get Lachish, maybe that'll scare him enough to give up. When King Sennacherib of Assyria came against the fortified cities of Judah and took them, Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent to the king of Assyria at Lachish, saying, I have done wrong, withdraw from me. Whatever you impose on me, I will bear. So Sennacherib has conquered Lachish. He's now living at Lachish. He's holding Lachish, and Hezekiah says, okay, I know where you're headed next eventually. I concede. Tell me what I need to do. And he conceded. It fell to the Assyrians in 701 BC. They wanted it because it controls the southern door of the Shephelah. You can still see remnants of the Assyrian ramp. Okay, in order to conquer a city, these high cities, remember the gate complex. I mean, you kind of want to go through the gate, right? That's the easiest way, but the gate complex is obviously very strongly defended and well built and very complicated to get through. So what you've got to do is you've got to haul in a bunch of dirt and build a ramp up to the side of the wall where you can just bust through the wall and go straight into the city. Of course, it's very difficult to build these ramps, but it's the easiest way to break into a city instead of trying to get into the gate. And here's the Assyrian siege ramp. You can still see remnants of that ramp from when Sennacherib defeated Lachish. Here's the ramp built by the Assyrians to get up to the wall to break through and conquer the Syrians. Now here are the Babylonians, years later. The Assyrians have faded off the scene. Babylon has conquered Assyria. The Assyrians did carry the northern tribes captive and infiltrate them with other people. And now here comes Babylon, and they want to conquer Jerusalem. And to conquer Jerusalem, you have to conquer the Shephelah. And the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah. When Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, all his armies, all his kingdoms were under his dominion, were fighting against Jerusalem and its cities. To defeat Jerusalem, you have to defeat the cities that Jerusalem owns to get to Jerusalem. Behold, I'm giving this city, Jerusalem, into the hand of the king of Babylon. He shall burn it with fire. And Jeremiah the prophet spoke all these words to Zedekiah, king of Judah in Jerusalem. And the armies of the king of Babylon were fighting against Jerusalem and against all the cities of Judah that were left, Lachish and Azekah, for these were the only fortified cities of Judah that remained. We know where those are now. We know why they're important. Lachish is the south door to the Shephelah, and Azekah is what? The heart of the Shephelah. And they're the last to be conquered by Babylon. And once they have Lachish and Azekah, what's next? Jerusalem's doomed. There's Lachish. Now the Babylonians want it. Here's the entrance ramp and the gate to Lachish. You perhaps have read about the Lachish letters. They were very famous when they were discovered. They're letters between the generals at Lachish and the king of Jerusalem and all the fighting that's going on. They're potsherds where they're recording messages and sending them by runners. This is the Jewish reconnaissance messages concerning Azekah and Lachish as the Babylonians were attacking Israel for the last time in 586 BC. And those Lachish letters were found in the gate area, right in this area, and have been published because they are reconnaissance. Where are the Babylonians? How close are they? What do we need? Are we going to be able to hold out against them? And of course, apparently before the letters could even get where they needed to go, they were defeated, if I remember the letters correctly. Anyway, on top of Lachish, of course, you will find ruins and all kinds of things to see, which you might walk around and talk about, but I'm more interested in the big picture and all of that. We're standing on Lachish. We're looking toward the watershed ridge in the east, right? So here's the Lachish Valley, east-west, up toward Hebron. But notice how narrow it is. It's really the east-west isn't so important as the north-south Shephelah connection is important. I want to stand on Lachish, and I want to look at Maresha. It's not very far away. You can see Maresha from Lachish. In fact, from Lachish, you can see Gath and Azekah. You've read about signal fires, right? Instead of these letters they'd send by runners, they could light signal fires that would, send some kind of messages. And obviously on these high hills and tells, you could light fires and you could see them from a distance. And in any case, let's stand on Tel Lachish and let's look at Maresha and even Gath and Azekah. We are standing on Lachish, and there is Maresha. Now, granted, this is a telephoto, so it looks closer than it is, but you can very clearly see Maresha from Lachish. It's very close. And as we turn a little bit to the left, off in the distance, we can see on this day Tel Gath quite prominently standing up there at the mouth of the Elah Valley. And in fact, this green bump here is Azekah. So again, when you're there, don't just look in front of you, right? Look around you. Try to get an idea of this whole region and how it all ties together and fits together, because God sculpted all of this to accomplish his purposes. There they are, our 5 valleys, their routes, and that is the Shephelah, and I absolutely love the Shephelah and love being there.